All right, everyone, going to be jumping into the top prop bets here for this NFL Thursday night showdown between the Chicago Bears and the Carolina Panthers. And real quickly, before I get into the game breakdown, I just want to point this one out as a good EV bet. Now, I personally hate this one. I think this makes for a much better bet on one of the sports books. Darnell Mooney with a little bit accurate, a little bit better of a passer, and Tyson Bagent there has been more involved. He's actually gotten the same amount of targets or so, but they've actually been quality targets. And so I sort of think he's going to get the over here. Now, the last time that we saw the Bears play in primetime, it was kind of ugly, but like they made a clear emphasis on trying to get him the football in the last game, and it worked. Against the Chargers, he started out with that one awesome catch, and then there really wasn't that much there. Las Vegas, we saw him be involved. And then prior to that, we saw Justin Fields just struggled to get him the football, especially when he was open, or just not gain him targets. And so I still think that there's a slight bump for Mooney with Bagent at quarterback tonight. And so for me, that's my biggest issue with this prop bet is I think it's a better bet to bet the over at 2.5 on one of the sports books. But now we go ahead and get into the game preview for this game. It is a very low over and under. The average is set at 38 for the over and under. The point spread is 3.4. Looking at the injury report, we do know that DJ Chark is doubtful. Laviska Shenault is still listed as out. And that's like really it for the Panthers. Miles Sanders is someone that is off the injury report, and I'll touch on him throughout this video. I think we have some interesting props for him. And then, yeah, Justin Fields, doubtful. Herbert was not activated, so he's not expected to play. From there, we're probably just expecting more of Deonta Foreman. Hopefully not too much of Roschon Johnson. He's been underwhelming. He's borderline looked bad last week. You got the revenge game narratives, obviously, for DJ Moore and Foreman a little bit there as well. It's strange when you watch the Panthers running backs this year. Like, Foreman would be their number one. And it's just weird that they went out and tried to get Sanders. It's also weird that the Bears thought Johnson was better than Foreman at the start of the season. But I do want to look at the team trends, the snap counts from last week for them, especially for Carolina. So, yes, DJ Chark going to miss this game. And so with that, I think the expectation is that Jonathan Mingo is going to play a lot of snaps. And then Terrace Marshall should be someone that does see an uptick in snaps as well. His have been all over the place thus far this season, but I do expect him to get about 80% of the snaps in this game. And that is the thing with the Panthers, is that we do see a lot of 3 receiver sets. And then I do think it's worth calling out that Sullivan is out in this game. So that should lead to Hayden Hurst getting some more run as well, probably about 50% of the snaps. But we have seen Tommy Tremble gain a little bit more work as well. Kind of interesting. So probably 50-50 split between those two. Hayden Hurst had one big catch where he was wide open. So it's tough to say if we really want to trust him for some props, and I'll touch on that. Earlier today, he was at 14.5 for receiving yards. That has since been bumped to 17.5. And so let's just go ahead and start out with the Panthers. And so now this number for Hayden Hurst almost seems a little bit too high at 17.5. It is a good matchup going against Chicago. He did have 4 targets in that game, but I just worry that he's not going to be as involved. We might see Tommy Tremble a little bit more involved. Now, it takes one catch to get there, but on the season, he has seen his role be reduced. And so if we just look at like recent weeks, it's been very hit or miss there. And now, yes, it's an easier matchup for Bryce Young. You would expect him to, probably get him the football at least, but interesting there. I do want to note Chuba Hubbard snaps, 65 and 64. And then we look at Miles Sanders, obviously kind of been battling a little bit the injury bug. Sanders played 20% and then 25%. I think it's interesting to note that a lot of Chuba Hubbard's snaps, the snap difference, I should say, came a little bit in the last drive where there was like a 7-play snap difference. And so we look at the total snaps from last week. We see Chuba Hubbard at 46. We see Miles Sanders only at 18. To me, if that game was close, we would have saw that flipped where you take away 7 snaps from Chuba Hubbard, so 39, and you give about 7 more to Miles Sanders. To me, it seemed like they didn't want to get Miles Sanders extra work in a game that was a blowout, in a game that they weren't going to win. Because I say that because he was the more impressive of the 2 running backs last week. And yes, a lot of his production came in the second half where the Colts were kind of playing a little bit further back and Sanders was able to get a lot of easy running lanes, but he definitely looked like the better running back. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see this more as a 60-40 split or something like that. Heck, we could see Miles Sanders start like he did in the second half last week. Chuba Hubbard's able to grind out the yards a little bit more, but Miles Sanders has looked better. And they try to get him involved in the short yardage screen game. One of Bryce Young's picks his feet were kind of unset, a little bit loose of a throw, misses Sanders, defender jumps it. Good play by the defender. But yeah, I think Miles Sanders is going to be more involved So I'm actually curious, are we getting any Miles Sanders props that we could be on? Maybe receiving yards. This is actually a popular one. People like this one, and I would agree. He had 5 targets, should get used in the passing game. I know the snaps aren't there, and we don't love that, but at the same time, this is a Bears defense that I think we can trust to give up some production in the passing game to opposing running backs. And we look at it, guys. Yes, the Bears have played 1 extra game, so the sample size is a little bit skewed, but the 3rd most receptions given up to opposing running backs and the most receiving yards given up. And so that should be a clear advantage that Carolina should try to target. And so this is one where if everything adds up to the point where we're seeing Miles Sanders more involved, as he should be, that's really the gamble, then I think that the 10 receiving yards that we're getting is simply too low. From there, we are seeing Tommy Tremble at 9.5 receiving yards to be a pretty good one. Even at 10, I would still maybe like that. Tremble is someone that has been playing a little bit more. And so if he continues to get about 50% of the snaps, I think he is a good target to get around 1 catch for 10 yards or something like that. That's not asking too much. And it's almost a little bit fluky that Hurst he was the one that was wide open. Like that could have easily been Tremble in the last game. So to me, like the 2 yardages that we're getting, the yardage difference between those two shouldn't be there. And I would almost say that these two would correlate. Like if Tremble gets over receiving yards, then probably Hayden Hurst is less likely. Let's talk about this one. Bryce Young for over his fantasy points. And this is one to me that does kind of stand out. Like he had some bad picks. Don't get me wrong. But he was rushing the football a lot in that game. And if we look at this matchup with Chicago, it's one of the easier matchups. And so a lot of the picks that Bryce Young had last week, and I would almost say all of them, were due to pressure. Like he had 2 really sloppy ones where he's throwing off balance, and the mechanics were thrown off, and I would say if he's able to get his feet set, I don't think that they're picked. And so let's just say that doesn't occur, then yes, he should be able to get this over fantasy score. Maybe he gets 1 pick, throws 1 pick, but this is very much dependent on him throwing a touchdown. Last week he looked pretty good rushing the football as well. Like if we get, let's just say 3 points from him rushing the football, that's going to be huge as well. But no, this is very much a matchup based thing where the Chicago Bears have given up 24, almost 25 points to opposing quarterbacks thus far this season. So I do think we want to be kind of looking at that. And so I'm fine betting the over here. It is a little bit dependent on, the 2 factors, him throwing a touchdown and him having some rushing yards. Then from there, for the Carolina Panthers, I don't want to touch the completions prop. I don't really want to touch Chuba Hubbard for under receptions, although I would say they should be getting Miles Sanders more involved in the passing game. Let's see the combination prop for Sanders for rush and receiving yards, if we are getting that. 37. So what is it, 10 and 22? I think I'd be okay with the over there, given the matchup. But the safer bet, I still think, is receiving yards. And I will note, I don't mind the idea of kicking points. Oh, that one's been taken down. What? Interesting. The prop for the Panthers kicker is taken down. Interesting. Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on into the Chicago Bears. So we take a peek at the Chicago Bears snap counts from last week because I do think it is important to look at. So they finally gave Deonta Foreman more work, like almost 60% of the snaps in that game. And they finally kind of limited Roschon Johnson's. Still 30 is a lot for him, but was kind of strange to me is that Darrington Evans, who I still think is their best pass catcher, only had 9%. Now, Blossom game is going to be out in this game as well. He's been kind of their fullback, so maybe we just see, honestly, a little bit more Foreman, a bigger back. To me, they should be getting Foreman the ball. And he's been impressive. I think he's going against the worst rush defense as well. And so I think we can project him to get a lot of carries in this one. And I'm actually curious, are we getting any carries props for him? Rush attempt, 14.5. Now, yes, this is going to be a little bit dependent on game script. If they're playing from behind like they were against the Chargers, then he's not going to get there. But if this game stays close like Vegas thinks it's going to, then I would say Foreman getting over 14.5 rushing attempts would be one I would want to use. And so if we just sort it by rushing attempts here, I do think that this is a pretty good one there for Foreman at 14.5. Again, not pay attention to the projections. I don't know what's going on there. That's probably, I don't know, that's because Herbert was expected to play. That'll be something that updates a little bit before game time there. I think that's too low at 14.5, guys. I do. It's more of a game script prop, okay? I don't know how we would exactly go about using that, but if they're playing with the lead, maybe Chicago Bears defense, we see that a lot in DFS where we could bet the over there. I would say that those two correlate though. And so we look at the other props that we're getting here. Again, I want to touch on this. Darnell Mooney, 3 receptions. This is just, I don't get it. It is a more difficult matchup against Carolina. Yes, they are probably just going to try to really rush the football. Again, that is where we'll probably see that Foreman should be able to get his carry. But just the emphasis that they have put on getting Mooney the football last week is something that really stood out to me. And it's the fact that he has looked really good. Like, he is someone that you should be trying to get the football to. It should go DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, and then wherever the play leads you, maybe Foreman rushing attempts, maybe Cole Kmet. But all in all, Mooney should be able to get over 3 receptions, or at least 3 receptions in this game. I know the matchup is more difficult, but at the same time, it's going to be more difficult for DJ Moore, and maybe that's part of it. Obviously, we have the DJ Moore revenge game. I don't know if we need to be worrying about that too much. 5 targets, 6 targets, 9 targets. I'm not even going to say that Banjit being the quarterback for Moore has really hurt his production. We just saw that the game against Denver was a game in which Denver was terrible at defense at that point. The Bucs defense are a pretty bad defense as well. Washington is a bad defense as well. Like, he has been able to take advantage of the more easy matchups. Chargers, you want a little bit more from him. Don't get me wrong. They were all terrible. All the Bears were terrible in that game, but he just hasn't really broken big plays in the past couple of weeks. And that's really been the difference. Like, nothing on the field seems too different. And so when we pull up the props for DJ Moore, we can see his under receiving yards at 54.5 is kind of being favorited. Now we're going to see that the data doesn't exactly agree with that, with his projection at 63.5 and the average sportsbook line being at 55.5, but they are heavily favoring the under there. And I don't know, that's probably one I want to stay away from, just honestly, given the revenge game narrative. Yeah, I don't think I want to touch that. Although seemingly the best prop we have. We are seeing Cole Kmet for over fantasy score. This was one that when I did my NBA video earlier on today, was at 54% likely to hit. It has since went down. Not exactly sure why. Okay, the average sportsbook line would have the over and under set at 8.8. The projection data likes it at 10. So at 9, it's probably the correct one. Now, this is going to be a more difficult matchup going against the Panthers defense. That is definitely a worry. But again, because DJ Moore's been a little bit less involved, because Banjit's been able to get other players involved, I don't think it's too shocking that Kmet has had some good games. Crazy against the Chargers. That's not something you'd think would be sustainable. But he had an awesome catch in the game against New Orleans. Really, Banjit just throws it up and Cole Kmet goes out and gets it. A lot of his production, though, I would say like 4 of his receptions were literally just plays that Banjit's kind of scrambling around and he found Kmet. And so there is some worry there that fluky production is not going to be there. But given the projection that we have, a touchdown is not really being factored into that for PrizePicks. So if he does get a touchdown in this game, then that over should hit pretty easily then. So not as appealing as it was earlier on today, but still a seemingly good one in this game. Then yeah, we do see Foreman over 14.5 rushing attempts is still a good one. DJ Moore for over fantasy score is one that's popping. Foreman for over 10 for a fantasy score is also popping as well. Going against this defense, you would kind of expect him to be able to punch in a touchdown. It's strange that they haven't been using him in the passing game as much, maybe just, kind of throw off the defense. Again, Darrington Evans is their best pass catching back, or Travis Homer, and they've been choosing to go with Roschon Johnson a little bit in the passing game, which is just weird. So yeah, a little bit tighter on this side of things. And I do want to see if we have any good tackles and assist props. Just in general across the NFL, Jordan Hicks, decent. Matthew, decent for under. For this game, Eddie Jackson for under. We did have a couple earlier on today that they corrected. Unfortunately, wasn't able to get that out to you guys prior to that. I do just want to take a quick peek at some other prop bets around the league or around the different leagues. So taking a peek at NBA, the current best bets that we are getting are going to be Jalen Suggs and Trae Young for over fantasy score, Miles Turner over fantasy score, maybe Jalen Suggs for over turnovers. Those are some good ones. And then if we look at hockey props, 2 good ones here. If you guys want to roll with those, that's fine. Then we switch up and get into underdog. Just in general here, Darnell Mooney, again, I don't love that one. We could do Hayden Hurst for under his receiving yards. If you guys want to roll with that, you could. Banjit, I didn't even touch on too much. I do want to touch on him just in general. If you guys are betting on Foreman for over fantasy score, please do it on underdog where it's a half point PPR. So, if he scores a touchdown, it's definitely going to be more likely for him to hit on underdog. That's basically what you're betting there. And I actually do like that bet. So we can see a little bit tighter on underdog currently, but I do want to get into Tyson Banjit and really just the rushing props for both quarterbacks. Okay, so Bryce Young is set at 9.5. He better get that over. Like, he's been pretty decent at rushing the football. Now that's because the pocket's collapsing and he doesn't really have a choice, but he should be able to get that over. Now Banjit maybe kind of looked stupid in the game against the Chargers, and that's because he had -1. He took a knee. He didn't rush the football at all. They didn't give him any design run plays either. It was strange. I'm like, he's kind of looked good rushing the football, and the offense shouldn't change too much. Obviously, Justin Fields rushing the football happened a lot, and we're not expecting 70 again, but honestly, 24 or so should occur. And my point by this is if he gets 20, maybe we're looking at his fantasy score. I don't think we want to touch this, though. Granted, I keep saying this, like, Like, if you were getting Justin Fields at 13 fantasy score, would anyone think twice about it? I know there's a weird bias with Fields, but, you know, Banjit arguably looked better. I've been saying that really since we saw him play. Instantly, the offense looked sharper. The passes plays were sharper. Instantly looked better. Now, don't get me wrong. Last week, Banjit's first INT was very, very much a Justin Fields one. It was terrible. You just toss it up and there's 3 defenders there. And that's the exact reason why I bashed Justin Fields a bunch. And it got to be fair. That's exactly, you got to bash him on that. The other 2 interceptions, his second one, very, very great play by the defender. He kind of jumps the pass. It's a little bit, tiny bit behind Darnell Mooney. If it's a little bit ahead, it's not picked off, but great defensive play. Mooney kind of tries to come back to the ball, kind of helps the defender pick it off. It was a weird play, but yes, that's on Banjit as well, but not as egregiously bad. And then his third one, that to me was clearly on the defender. The defender kind of bubbles out a little bit. It's a middle of the field kind of route. It looked like an option route where Banjit seems like he's going to stop and come back the receiver. Instead, the receiver kind of keeps going. Just a miscommunication on the play. I mean, that could occur again. But at the same time, the Panthers defense is more difficult. And really, if he's going to get his over fantasy score, then probably Foreman isn't going to get his over. Okay, so that stuff should correlate. So let's go ahead and get into the bet of the day for this slate. We did see that Bryce Young for over 13.5 for a fantasy score is probably one that we should be looking at. It's kind of ugly, right? But going against the Bears defense, which has been one of the easiest matchups, I think we want to be targeting that. And then I went with Darnell Mooney for over passing yards. That is just a May thing. That is not a good EV bet. If you guys don't want to do that one, that's fine. This is my way of kind of saying I think the receptions prop on him is wrong. And because they're not giving us a fantasy score prop on him, which is annoying, I went with receiving yards. That is one you could cross off for potentially a better EV bet elsewhere, one of the hockey ones or the NBA one. I'd be fine with that, and I'll show you guys that in a second here. But if we're just looking at one for this game, I don't mind that one. I do worry that this is going to be the DJ Moore game, and I don't like the fact that, you know, the under for DJ Moore's receiving yards was seemingly one of the better prop bets on the slate as well, and I'm fading that. Like, that's ugly. Miles Sanders, I just think he's going to get more work in this game. I do think that at the end of the game last week, we could have easily, if the game was close, I think it's Miles Sanders getting the passing down work because he looks better. He's more dynamic, and he also had 5 targets in the game as well. And so if you take away those, it was about 7 snaps or so, and switch that with Chuba Hubbard, you take away Chuba Hubbard's and add it to Miles Sanders, then yeah, Chuba Hubbard getting 10 for a fantasy score is not likely, and that is another decent EV bet that we are getting. This is kind of a bet on the game staying close and also a bet on maybe the Bears winning this game. All in all, I do think that this game should stay close. Thus, Deonta Foreman again, 14.5 rush attempts should make sense. Khalil Herbert ruled out. I see him getting the over there. And then Hayden Hurst. If Tommy Tremble continues to get more snaps, then I think Hayden Hurst getting the under here makes sense. Don't love that one, but that's kind of what the data is telling us to do, so I'm just going to roll with that. And then this would just be a pure kind of EV bet that you can make today. These are the 4 best prop bets that we have available on the game according to the data. Again, I don't know if I really love those too much. I would actually think that Darnell Mooney for over 3 receptions would be a better bet. I think that's a pretty good bet actually on the sports books at 2.5. Same thing with DJ Moore. Like, I do think that there's something to the revenge game. I do think that that's there. Now, has he seen a slightly reduced role with Banjit at quarterback because he's spreading it out a little bit more? Sure. I would say if these 2 things occur, then we probably would be wanting to bet both Deonta Foreman for over 14.5 receptions and probably Cole Kmet for his over fantasy score. Like we saw, those were 2 decent bets. Then Hayden Hurst, that's one of the better under bets that we currently have. And then I just went with 2 NBA bets with it as well. Those were the 2 best EV bets that we have available on the slate as it sits right now. That's going to be all for this video. I'm actually strangely excited for this game. I think it's going to be like a kind of a guilty pleasure, if you will, to watch this game. Because we don't know what to expect, and sometimes I enjoy that part of it. But that's going to be all for this video. If you guys want access to the tools, it is available at 9to5sports.com for just $10 a month. Link to that in the description below. Hit the like and subscribe button. Let's have a good slate, and as always, let's keep cashing.